مطلوب ہوگا جام لینا جب بھی کوثر کا سلام ایسا پڑھوں گا دل برائے گا پیغمبر سلام ایسا پڑھوں گا دل برائے گا پیغمبر زمین کربلا کیا پوچھنا تیرے مقدر کا ہے تجھ میں آج تک محفوظ سرمایہ پیغمبر ہے تجھ میں آج تک محفوظ سرمایہ پیغمبر کمار غم کیوں نہ ہو دل غم سے ٹوٹے کیوں نہ سر کا علم بردار آخر دائی تھا بازو برابر علم بردار آخر بھائی تھا بازو برابر لب دریا لمبردار بھی کام آ گیا آخر بس اب اللہ حافظ حضرت زینب کی چادر بس اب اللہ حافظ حضرت زینب کی چادر تیری غیرت کو آخر کیا ہوا کچھ تو نے سوچا بھی بھری محفل میں کیسا تذکرہ زینب کی چادر بھری محفل میں کیسا تذکرہ زینب کی چادر کا مجھے مطلوب ہوگا جب نوجوان پسر شہیدی سے جدا ہوا روشن قمر سپر بری سے جدا ہوا نور نظر امام مبین سے جدا ہوا لخت جگر حسین و حسین سے جدا ہوا لخت جگر حسین و حسین سے جدا ہوا دل داغ ہو گیا دلو جان بطول کا گھر بے چرا ہو گیا سب تیرے رسول کا گھر بے چرا ہو گیا سب تیرے رسول کا بڑے چیز سے ٹکڑے ہو گیا لخت جگر کا دل خود باپ نے چھدا ہوا دیکھا پسر کا دل ہوتا ہے آپ گینے سے نازک بشر کا دل پتھر کا دل نہیں ہے یہ دل ہے پدر کا دل پتھر کا دل نہیں ہے یہ دل ہے پدر کا دل ایوبی اگر ہو تو دمبر نکال پڑے آنسو تمہیں تو منہ سے کلے جان نکل پڑے آنسو تمہیں تو منہ سے کلے جان نکل پڑے پیارے نعت حسین علیہ السلام کے لائی حرم سرام میں بہن ہاتھ تھام کے تھلا رہے تھے پاؤں شہید تشنکام کے سردوش پہ تھا زینب علی مقام کے سردوش پہ تھا زینب علی مقام کے فرماتے تھے بہن علی اکبر گزار گئے ہم ایسے سخت جاتے کہ اب تک نہ مر گئے ہم ایسے سخت جاتے کہ اب تک نہ مر گئے ساتھ تمہیں شہید کا دینے کو آئے ہیں کس کس کے داغات جگر پر اٹھائے ہیں، پیٹے ہیں خاک اڑائے ہیں، آنسو بہائے ہیں، یہ ہم تمہارے لال کے خون میں نہائے ہیں، یہ ہم تمہارے لال کے خون میں نہائے ہیں۔ سر تھا حسین بے کسو تنہا کی گود میں، بیٹے کی جان نکلی ہے بابا کی گود میں، بیٹے کی جان نکلی ہے بابا کی گود میں۔ دیکھا یہ کہہ کے بالی سکینہ کو یاد سے، لپٹی وہ دوڑ کر شہ گرد و احساس سے، طاقت نہ تھی کلام کی ہر چند پیاس سے، بولی وہ تشنہ کام شہ حق شناس سے، بولی وہ تشنہ کام شہ حق شناس سے، کیا اس بلا کے بن سے تہیا سفر کا ہے، صدقے گئی بتا ارادہ کدھر کا ہے، صدقے گئی بتا ارادہ کدھر کا ہے۔ فرمایا شہنہاں سفر ناگزیر ہے، آؤ گلے لگو کہ یہ صحبت اخیر ہے، اب آرزوئے قرب خدائے قدیر ہے، تنہائے ہم سپاہ مخالف کثیر ہے، تنہائے ہم سپاہ مخالف کثیر ہے۔ اے ہو یہ مرحلہ جو عیانت خدا کرے، جس کا نہ کوئی دوست بھی وہ کیا کرے، جس کا نہ کوئی دوست بھی وہ کیا کرے۔ جانا ہے دور سب کو جو آنا نہ ہو ادھر، ضد کر کے روئیو نا ہمیں چاہتی ہو گر، پہلے پہلے آج شب فقد پدا، سو رہی ہو ماں کی چھاتی پاغر بس رکھے سر، سو رہی ہو ماں کی چھاتی پاغر بس رکھے سر، راحت کے دن گزر گئے یہ فصل اور ہے، اب یوں بسر کرو گے یتیموں کا دور ہے، اب یوں بسر کرو گے یتیموں کا، اب یوں بسر کرو گے یتیموں کا دور ہے۔ نانے سے ہاتھ جوڑ کے بولی وہ تشنہ کام، بتلائیے مجھے کہ یتیمی ہے کس کا نام، آنکھوں سے خوبا کیے کہنے لگے امام، کھل جائے گا یہ درد و آلام تم پچا بشا، کھل جائے گا یہ درد و آلام تم پچا بشا، بھی نہ پوچھو کچھ یہ مصیبت عظیم ہے، مر جائے جس کا باپ و بچہ یتیم ہے، مر جائے جس کا باپ و بچہ یتیم، مر جائے جس کا باپ و بچہ یتیم ہے۔ Recite a Surah Fatiha for all of your marhumin, especially for the marhumin of the sponsors of tonight's program, the food sponsors and the program sponsors, and we had recent death in our community also. For that marhuma also, please recite Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salatul wa salam. Allahumma salli. محمد رضا آئیے، آپ آئیے، بلائیے۔
Put it on his collar. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Mu'mineen. So we are very honored to have Sheikh Jafar-e-Sadiq with us for the next 3 nights. So I encourage all of you to attend the programs, which is for the Shahada of Imam Jafar-e-Sadiq alayhi salam. Uh, I don't need to introduce Sheikh Jafar-e-Sadiq. He is very well known, but just for those of us who are new, uh, he is a resident alim at one of the Islamic centers in Leeds in UK. Uh, he is he has taken his Islamic education from Islamic College London, and also under the guidance of Ayatollah Taqi Madarasi from Karbala, from the Hawza in Karbala. He has published a lot of books, and he has been a regular, speaker at different centers, multiple centers. His perspectives are different, and what's important is, or what's new is that you'll find his topics very relevant to the new ideas and the current ongoings in the world. So, without taking much time, I'd like to invite Sheikh Jafar-e-Sadiq on this member and start his speech. Aloud Salwat.
على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Agha Mahdi, the managing committee, the whole community for inviting me back again. It's an honor to be able to see old friends after, I think, maybe 5 years or something like that, having had opportunity to come. And mashallah, with the new center as well, what a blessing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you all tawfiq. And inshallah, we have some time together to be able to discuss our ideas. I want to be able to state that as much as I'm presenting my research, I'm very keen on your feedback in the presentation. So not only during the majlis, but after, if you have ideas, clarifications, ways that you could practically implement this or challenge this, then please let me know, because a lot of what I'm presenting is going to inform the next book that I'm writing, and inshallah your guidance and ideas will help form that book as well, inshallah. So with your dua, we begin with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the year 1765, the author of the great work, the Encyclopedia or Encyclopedia, the French version that started this great movement, by the name of Denis Diderot. And Denis Diderot, at that time in 1765, was a very poor individual. Even though he began something like the encyclopedic works that we use until today, despite him being the founder and author of this work in French, at that time he was a very poor individual. His daughter was due to get married. And it so happened that his financial plight was news to Catherine the Great, who was the Empress of Russia at that time. Learning of his financial situation and that Denis Diderot wanted to be able to marry off his daughter and look after his daughter's wedding, she, in her generosity, decided to purchase the entirety of his library for a very large amount. The amount was the equivalent of around $150,000 today. She purchases the entirety of his library, but says, keep the library in your house. If and when I need some of the books, I will ask for them, and then you can send them to me. But until then, keep your library, continue to use the library, but here is the equivalent of $150,000 at that time for you to be able to use. Denis Diderot did indeed utilize this money. He decided to use that money in order to be able to spend on his daughter's wedding and something for himself. He bought a very beautiful, expensive red garment that he could wear for himself. It so happened that as he was in his house wearing this beautiful, expensive red garment, he wrote later on that I felt that this red garment disrupted the unity that was within my house. What he meant by that was that it looked out of place with everything else that he previously had. Previously, because of his financial constraints, he lived a very humble sort of life. And so everything in his house was also quite humble. But now he had this money, and now he also had this very expensive red dress, which looked out of place. So what did he decide to do? He decided that with this money, he should upgrade everything in his house to be in accordance with the expensive dress. Instead of having an ordinary rug, he ordered the most expensive rug from Damascus to be shipped over to Paris. Instead of having an ordinary sort of couch or settee, he decided to replace it with something far more luxurious and comfortable. Instead of having sort of an ordinary cupboard and things in his sitting room, he had to replace it so that everything was now in accordance with the single dress that he had bought. When a person actually spends more and more in order to be able to keep in pace with the other belongings that he has, there is actually a term for this, and this is called the Diderot effect, named after this very famous author of the first French encyclopedia, Denis Diderot. That when you purchase one thing which is expensive, you now find yourself in need of purchasing several other expensive items so that the rest of the items are in pace with the first expensive item that you bought. We will come back to this story towards the end of the majlis tonight, inshallah. And you'll see why this story is so important. Alhamdulillah, with your kind blessings and invite, we have an opportunity to be with you for 3 nights, inshallah. And I have the honor of being able to present the latest book that we have published, which is called Prospering Through a Cost of Living Crisis, 5 practical points of guidance from the Quran and Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam for Muslim communities, charities, and families to adopt. When we say prospering through a cost of living crisis, what we mean is that whenever there is a sort of economic downturn or an economic crash or the bubble bursts and people struggle financially during that economic downturn, what are the specific guidances that the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have given to a community in order to strengthen themselves economically? Sadly, from time to time, many nations undergo these economic crises. Sadly, it's quite cyclical, isn't it? Sometimes every 10, 20 years, there is this sort of bursting of the bubble. Be it 2008, with sort of the housing crash, or the discussions that you're having now, sort of that there is a banking crisis, again, that is on the verge of happening. And more than half the country in a recent poll is very worried about their personal financial circumstance. In the UK, where I am from, we have gone through 13 years of austerity measures, which means that our government, a very far-right government, has systematically slashed public services affecting people direly. Very, very bad effects. Now, in this year, 2023, just this year alone, the inflation rate is between 12 and 18%, just this year. That means food, mortgage, water, electricity, gas, everything in this year alone has gone up 12 to 18%. Obviously, salaries, wages have not gone up at the same rate. In fact, in real terms, most people have still got their wages from 2008. So if everything is becoming more expensive, and people's wages have gone down or stagnated, you can imagine the extent of the difficulty that people are actually living in. Shall I tell you how difficult it is in the UK at the moment for people to live? The UK is the 5th largest economy in the world, huh? 5th largest economy in the world. Right now, and I'm not exaggerating, this is what a report came out from the Head Teachers Union. You know, when you have teachers inside school, there's the head teacher, and then there's a union of those. And they tell you what's going on inside schools. As an example, inside schools right now in the UK, children are so hungry, they go to the toilets to eat toilet paper in order to stave off their hunger. This is the 5th largest economy in the world. And the Muslim community is no less struck by these challenges. In fact, the Muslim community is overrepresented in terms of the financial struggles compared to the rest of the nation. And so we wrote this book, Prospering Through a Cost of Living Crisis, which looks at 5 specific guidances from the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in the context of when there is an economic downturn. Because this can happen at any time, into any community, into any family, whether you're living in any part of the world, west or east, north or south. So I have the honor over the next 3 nights to be able to present to you some of it. And what I'll be doing tonight and tomorrow, inshallah, is presenting 2 chapters from this book. And then on the 3rd night, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, is to present a chapter from my forthcoming book, which will help us to transition between the 2 topics that I want to be able to present to you, inshallah. Tonight, inshallah, as per the presentation, I want to talk about the Islamic approach to redistribution of wealth. You see, this particular topic is very interesting because, as you know, whether you sort of align yourself with the Democrats or the Republicans, everyone is talking about redistribution of wealth, how they do it. You probably know even better than me, you've heard of that term, very bogus term. They say things like trickle-down economics. Have you heard this term? I'm sure you have. And normally on the Republican side, they preach trickle-down economics. What do they say? They will say, if we give tax breaks to job creators. They will employ more people, and as a result, wealth will trickle down to different classes, lifting people out of poverty. This is the basic assumption. Have you heard this? I'm sure you've all heard this. Now, trickle-down economics is as silly as it sounds, because in no other part of life do you imagine something trickling down being of any benefit to you. If you are dirty and you go into the shower, do you imagine that when you turn on the shower, you will just have a trickle down of water, a few droplets, and that will make you clean? No one would believe this. If there is a drought and you want the rain to come, will a little trickling down of rain be sufficient? No, of course it won't. So why would trickling down of wealth from one class to another be sufficient for that class? It wouldn't be, would it? So you know, even by the name, that they are making fun of you. You know by the name that they are making fun of you, and they're not being serious about looking after people who are going through economic crisis or people who are in the lower echelons of the class struggle. So it raises the question, well, how does Islam propose to be able to lift people out of poverty? And how does it systematically ensure the redistribution of wealth amongst classes? Surely, as you know, there is such a dearth, a wealth of information in Islamic economic theory that there must be some clear guidance on how a community or a nation lifts itself out of poverty. The problem we have is that our economic system does not reflect the Islamic economic system. Actually, it reflects a very Christian notion of redistribution of wealth, and that is charity. We think that when we give charity and sadaqah, it lifts people out of poverty. That's what we've come to believe, and that's the practice of our communities by and large. Now again, if charity was to lift people out of poverty, it would have done so by now, and you wouldn't have seen people living in poverty. The poverty remains. So therefore, even by the waqi', by the reality of your own eyes, charity is not the solution to poverty. You know, you've probably seen many a time someone who is homeless, God forbid. You know, you're driving, you come to the red light, maybe there's a gas station there, and the person has a card. He has a card and it's written on it. Maybe he'll say, I'm a war veteran and I'm homeless. Can you spare any change? Have you seen that sort of person? I'm sure you have. Now, if you're kind and generous, you may roll down your window and you may give him a little bit of change. You might, a couple of bucks, $10, maybe something you might give to him as an example. I'm asking you, be honest. When you give him that $5 or that $10, does it lift him out of poverty? Does it? Yes or no? No, it doesn't. And you know it doesn't, right? Now it might see him through a little bit of that day. He may be able to get some food for that day. He may even be able to get himself a Motel 6 for the night, as an example. But does it lift him out of poverty? No. Does it give him social mobility such that he's in a position to actually fulfill his potential, his God-given potential as a human being? The answer is no. So we know that just by giving charity to people, it doesn't actually lift them out of poverty. But what we have is a system that follows this. What you'll see is, may Allah bless our charitable organizations. All of them are doing phenomenal work. But when they want something, they will ask, please give $50 a month sponsorship to an orphan in Yemen. Please give $50 sponsorship a month to an orphan family in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria. And so we think that what we're supposed to do is give $50 a month subscription to this Shi'i organization or to this Muslim organization, and we think that we're doing our job in terms of lifting people out of poverty. The question I raise to you is that the actual Islamic system of redistribution of wealth? is zakat and khums and sadaqah, the actual system of redistribution of wealth? Or are those secondary and tertiary aspects of redistribution of wealth? What I want to be able to do in the series, inshallah, over the next 3 nights is the following. Number one, tonight, to show you what is the Islamic system of redistribution of wealth. Tomorrow night, inshallah, I want to be able to show you how the ahadith that have reached us from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam encourages giving loans and qard over sadaqah. In their own words, they prefer qard and loans over sadaqah. Why is that? And how does qard work as an investment in people in the Islamic system, preferenced over giving sadaqah? That will be tomorrow night, inshallah. And the third night, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, is to show you how the Quran has 25 charitable avenues of investment. Why is that important? Because we only hear of 5 charitable avenues, generally speaking. We only know of 4 or 5. Normally, when a Shi'i organization comes and says, please, we want to be able to serve the community, or we're helping people in Iraq or in Syria or in Afghanistan or in Pakistan or in Yemen, we normally, mashallah, we support certain areas. We will support orphans, for example. We will support widows, for example. Our charitable services often go towards making sure we have our Husayniyat in Masajid. Our charitable services make sure we have good education. We donate towards the mosque program, which is excellent. But by and large, this is the extent of where our charitable services and donations go. Did you know that there are some 25 charitable services mentioned in the Quran? But we have been reduced to maybe 4 or 5 popular ones, which we will talk about, inshallah, over these coming nights. And the idea is, over the next 3 nights, is to introduce to you a very skeletal understanding of how the Islamic economic system works, not just over in Iran, but here, how a community can adopt the Islamic economic system and help ourselves to become a much more powerful, independent community, inshallah. And the idea is to show you this book that we have written, and also the forthcoming work that we are currently penning, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So with your blessings, inshallah, we will begin with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So I have with me this presentation, which we will try to go through the slides. And if anyone wants the slides, we've emailed it to Agha Mahdi. He can send it to you, inshallah, or we can send it to you. There's no problem. So feel free to discuss during the program or after the program and give your feedback on some of the arguments and the ideas as well, inshallah. So as you can see here, the first slide is the topic redistribution of wealth, the Islamic approach to genuine redistribution of our wealth and resources. Ahsant. The first thing is a supplication which comes to us from our 4th Imam, Zainul Abidin, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. This is from Sahifa as-Sajjadiyya, which you know is one of our most outstanding traditions of ad'iyah. This is from dua number 30. Dua number 30 is Imam's dua for repaying back debts. If anyone here has overwhelming debts, burdensome debts, and you are struggling to pay it off, it could be mortgage, it could be credit card, whatever. Imam alayhi salam has a dua for you to be able to utilize with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to pay off these debts. I want you to focus on a particular line here. I'll read the section, but I want you to focus on the first line. Allahumma allimni husnut taqdeer. Oh Allah, teach me excellent distribution of wealth. Now you know when an Imam Ma'soom alayhi salam with his blessed and perfect tongue makes a statement, it's not simply him making a statement. He is showing you that in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is something which is known as excellent distribution, the right way to redistribute wealth amongst people. And then he asks, Allahumma allimni, teach it to me as well. So not only is there the concept of redistribution of wealth, there is the right way to do it, and there is also the wrong way to do it. Allimni husn at-taqdir, excellent distribution of wealth. Hold me back through your gentleness from squandering that wealth. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us a certain amount of rizq. It could be that someone sitting amongst us, he or she is on $2,000 a month as wage. It could be someone is on $10,000 a month on wage. That's not unheard of. For a lot of professions, that's quite normal. And even more, if maybe you are entrepreneurial, if you have various investments, you could be earning $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 a month and much, much more. How does Islam, listen to my words, demand from us to utilize our wealth? Do you think when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you $20,000, $100,000, $1 million, it is yours? Or actually, is there a specific redistribution that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls for? Oh Allah, teach me excellent distribution. Hold me back through your gentleness from squandering. Allow me to attain my provisions through lawful means. Direct my spending towards the gateways of devotion, and take away from me any possession which will bring forth in me pride, leads me towards insolence, drags me towards rebellion. Oh Allah, make me love the companionship of the poor and help me to be their companion with excellent patience. Now, I want to give you a quote which is a profound statement by one of our great ulama of the previous generation by the name of Ayatollah al-Shaheed Sayyid Muhammad Hussein Beheshti. Have any of you heard of Ayatollah Beheshti? Yes? He was a great martyr in the revolution of the Islamic Republic. I want to read to you, he was actually one of the heads of the ulama who used to deal with how to set up the Islamic economic system after the revolution. So I'm quoting to you from his works. I want you to see how important in Islam proper redistribution of wealth is. And you'll see the profundity of the analogy that he gives. He says the following. You can read it here with me if you wish. Wealth in society is like blood in the human body. As blood should be in circulation in the body, so that all the organs in proportion to their need and position may use it to their advantage. Similarly, wealth also should remain in circulation among all the strata of society, so that its members may maintain their life and be vigorous and energetic. If blood is blocked in one organ so that it does not flow to other parts of the body in sufficient quantity, thrombosis will cause serious trouble in that body. It may upset the entire system or may even lead to death. Let me explain simply. You have your brain, you have your heart, you have your liver, and so on and so forth. What happens if blood is not properly distributed to those organs? What happens? Ahsan. Those vital organs will not function properly and potentially even lead to death. So each part of that organ doesn't need the same amount of blood necessarily. The brain and the liver don't need the same amount of blood, but each organ needs a certain amount of blood in order for it to function properly. If it is blocked to that organ, then that organ cannot function properly. What happens if blood does not reach your brain? What happens if blood does not reach your heart? You know better than me. What will happen very, very quickly is not only the disease to that body, but also potentially death to the entirety of the body. Correct? So Ayatollah Shahid Beheshti is saying wealth in a society should be distributed like blood is distributed to the rest of the body. He continues in his quote, similarly, if wealth is blocked in a particular class of society, many social ailments will begin to develop. As blood keeps all the organs alive and enables the body to function in a coordinated manner, the same is the case with wealth in society. Without economic equilibrium, members of the society cannot make coordinated efforts which are necessary to save the society from decay and ruin. Quite simply put, if wealth is not distributed to this part of society, what happens? It falls into decay and ruin. Crime comes about, lack of opportunity comes about, and all of the negative aspects of society will arise in this part because wealth has not been properly redistributed into that side. It should be obvious to us. We see it every day when we drive through the city. We see different parts of the city with different levels of affluence and different levels of poverty. Is there a fair and balanced redistribution of wealth? No, there isn't. And as you can see, the outcome, certain parts of society are left behind and even, God forbid, left to destroy themselves. The body is the same way. In the same way we understand this with the logic of the body, we should also understand it with the logic of our communities as well. Now, there are three problems that face us when it comes to proper redistribution of wealth within the Muslim communities. And I want to mention them in brief, and I will touch upon them more, inshallah, tomorrow night, and more in detail on the third night, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So I'm just going to run through these problems very quickly, and then, as I said, delve into them more on the forthcoming nights, inshallah. One hadith comes to us from our sixth Imam, Jafar ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhima. And he says the following, and this is from one of our most earliest of compilations. Sheikh knows better than me the importance of our book, Man La Yahdaruhu al-Faqih. It's one of our 4 canonical books, one of our 4 most important books. This hadith is found in this particular text. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says the following, Islamic taxes, now he uses the word zakat, but he doesn't mean zakat, or our ulama state that the Imam doesn't mean zakat as in 2.5% tax on certain types of wealth. He means zakat as in all our giving and distribution of wealth from our monies. Islamic taxes were made as a test upon the wealthy. Now here again, our ulama state, wealthy does not mean rich. Don't use the English language here. Use how Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam means it. When he uses the word wealthy, al-aghniya, he means anyone with a surplus. This is very important. Please make sure you focus on this point of the lecture. What is the meaning of wealth here? Anyone with a surplus. Surplus could be $50. At the end of your month, when you have your income and then you have your outgoings, it could be that you have $50 less. You are also considered to be wealthy, because this is as opposed to the fuqara. A faqir in the Islamic definition is someone who earns less than his needs for 1 year, right? So let's say your needs for you and your family, I'm just giving a figure for the sake of giving it, is $40,000 in the year. And you only earn $35,000 in the year. You are considered faqir. But if your needs, your income is 40,000, your needs are 40,000 and your income is 45,000, you have a surplus of 5,000. You are also considered wealthy. So whether you have a surplus of $50, $1,000, $1 million, this hadith is addressing you. Okay? Please note the hadith. Islamic taxes were made as a test upon the wealthy and an aid to the poor. Had people given their dues properly, they would not remain a poor, needy Muslim. And Muslims would have been comfortable by what Allah had prescribed for them. People are not impoverished, nor in need, nor hungry, nor unclothed, except because of the sins of the wealthy. Those who have a surplus, they are not utilizing it in the Islamic way, and as a result, many Muslims are left poor. And you see, so this is the first problem. What is the first problem? Our Muslim communities have not been taught about redistribution of wealth. What you've been told is zakat, khums, and sadaqah. And in most places, because we don't have zakat, we don't even know the laws of zakat, many of us. Because we don't need, many of us, to know the laws of zakat. You've just been told khums, sadaqah. But you don't know about the Islamic economic system of redistribution of wealth. This is the first problem. The second problem and the third problem, we will delve into more on the second and third night, but I'm going to mention it briefly, inshallah. The second problem we have is that our redistribution of our resources is controlled by what's known as the donor-aid agency relationship. You're a donor, mashallah, you want to do good. So where do you give your money? Well, who determines where you give your money? For the majority of the cases, where the aid agency tells you we are doing work in Afghanistan, you say, mashallah, that's excellent, let me give to this cause. So who controls the vision of where millions, maybe even billions goes to? The aid agency. So you want to do good. You have something that you want to give, mashallah. You want to help someone who's poor. So what happens? The aid agency says, we have a project in Yemen. So you say, mashallah, let me give it to the project in Yemen. The question I pose is this: is the redistribution of Islamic wealth governed by aid agencies? Or is it governed by the Quran and the vision of the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim? I'm not saying that the aid agencies are doing bad work. Bil'akis, they're doing phenomenal work. May Allah bless them. I'm asking whether the donors and the agencies should determine where your wealth goes, or is there another factor as to whom and what determines where your wealth goes? We'll come to this more on the second and third night, inshallah. By the way, this is not just a problem for the Muslim community, it's a problem for around the world. Researcher Michael Barnett has said that there's a humanitarian club that determines and has exercised control over resources and agenda setting of where donors' contributions should reach. You want to read the whole article? It is there for you. The third problem is this. We'll talk about this on the third night as well, inshallah. The third problem is that when the aid agency wants to take your donation, it presents to you a very emotional picture of where you should spend your money. You have, mashallah, $100 to give in sadaqah. They will present to you the image of the orphan, the yatima, with one shoe, the house is broken behind her, and say, your $100 can help this person. So you're being advertised to, and you're being emotionally advertised to. Again, I ask, I'm not saying it's a bad place to give you $100. I'm saying, is that the way Islam wants us to run an economic system? Based on emotion, based on a video which has a sad soundtrack. Look at this quote. This is a quote from Amna Mirza. Again, may Allah bless her for her good work. Chief, look at the word, marketing officer of Zakat Foundation America, in a 2022 interview said, our job is to pull the most compelling stories, be it photos or videos from the field or these testimonials and from our beneficiaries, and then try to get it out to the public. And there are days that I found myself crying looking at these photos. So she knows it's an emotive photo, so she's going to present to you the most emotive photo. And then you see the video or the photo and you say, oh, this is painful, let me give my $50. I'm not saying it's bad to give. I'm saying, is this how the economic power of Islam is supposed to be utilized? Think about these things very carefully. So now, what I want to do is to switch to the topic of the actual redistribution of wealth in Islam and how the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam have spoken about it. And I will suggest that for many of you, this is the first time you will ever be hearing about this topic. Hands up, before tonight, how many of you have heard of the Islamic model of redistribution of wealth? Hands up. 1, mashallah. And 2, I'm sure Sheikh knows better than me. 3. Can you see? In a crowd of, I don't know, Sheikh, how many do we have? 30, 40 as an example. If only 3 people have ever heard of this topic, it leaves us way, way behind, doesn't it? So, there are 2 premises for the redistribution of wealth. The first one is an ayah of the Quran. And this ayah of the Quran is from chapter number 59, Surah Al-Hashr, verse number 7. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that redistribution of wealth in Islam is not perfunctory. It's not an after the thought matter. It is essential to the whole economic system of Islam. It's not a plaster over a gaping wound. That's not how redistribution of wealth works in Islam, like it works in other economic systems. That people tell you, oh yeah, we want to be able to help the poor, but all along the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. This is not the system in Islam. And if the redistribution of wealth in the Muslim community is working like that, then it is not an Islamic system. It is more akin to the capitalist system, where the rich remain rich and the poor remain poor. Let me show you this ayah of the Quran. You'll be shocked when you see it. Whatever spoils are taken from the people of the villages, Allah has turned it over to His apostle. All of it belongs to Allah, the apostle, the near of kin, the orphans, the needy, and the wayfarer. 6 categories of people whom this wealth is supposed to be given over to. Why? Now look at this. كَيْ لَا دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ, the Quran says. So that wealth does not circulate amongst the rich. In Islam, wealth is not permitted to circulate amongst one class of people. If those people who were rich before remain rich and the poor remain poor, as we said by the hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, the only reason why they have remained poor is because of the sins of those people who have surplus. Wealth in Islam is not supposed to circulate amongst one class of people. We often find this. A rich family marries a rich family. Rich family invests in another rich family. This is actually against the ethos and the spirit of Islam. It's actually supposed to be a genuine redistribution of wealth in every way, shape, or form. But because we have embedded capitalistic classisms into our community, as opposed to how the Quran describes this issue, we've completely lost the spirit of Islam. You know better than me, how many wives did our Holy Prophet have? 9 wives. And when he married, what did he marry for? To spread the deen and to be able to bring people into Islam close to him that could help him spread the message. Sometimes he would marry even more wealthier people so that he could utilize and benefit from this exchange into a wealthier class system. So that wealth may not merely circulate amongst one class of people, and whatsoever the messenger gives you, whatever rules the messenger gives you, you take it. Even if it's against your personal pocket and your wallet, you take the rules. And whatever the messenger of Allah tells you to abstain from, you stay away from it. Even if it's not in your personal interests. Now, the second ayah of Quran is very important, and we're going to focus on this for the next 5 minutes, inshallah, before concluding. This is the verse that primarily gives us the guidance on redistribution of wealth in Islam. This ayah is revealed in Surah Al-Baqarah, which was revealed in the city of Medina al-Munawwara quite early on, after Hijrah, in the first couple of years. The verse says the following, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yas'alunaka, they ask you, Ya Rasulullah, Mada yunfiqun, what should we spend in the way of Islam? Look at the question. They didn't say become. They didn't say how much should we spend. They said, what should we spend? Mada yunfiqun. I'm asking you a question. You're all very intelligent people. Why would the companions ask the Prophet, what should we spend, and not how much should we spend? What do you think? What do you think? When they were spending then, what were they spending? How were they spending? What were they giving to Islam?
It's not a singular focus.
Ahsant. If it's not singular, what were they giving? Ahsant. Sheep, camels, horses, weapons, foodstuffs, time. So they never reduced their giving from their resource to just singularly money and material wealth. They saw it much wider than that. So they said, Ya Rasulullah, ماذا ينفقون? What should we spend? Look at the response. قل Ya Rasulullah, al-afwa. Whatever is surplus to your needs should be spent in the way of Islam. This is very interesting, very important. Just follow along with me. Whatever is surplus. Now me, as an example, if I earn, I'm just giving a figure for the sake of giving figures. If I earn $50,000 and my outgoings is $30,000, I have $20,000 in surplus. How do I use that money? Normally, what I think is that $20,000 belongs to me. So I say to myself, well, I will buy a nicer car, or I'll go on a nicer holiday, or I'll go out more, or I'll buy a third pair of cleats that I don't need, or another pair of sneakers. I have all this money that's available to me. Look at what the verse says. What is supposed to be spent in the way of Islam? Al-afwa. Whatever is surplus to your needs, that is what is supposed to be spent in Islam. If my monthly income, just as an example, is $5,000 a month, my expenditure is $3,000, I now have $2,000. What I'm used to thinking is, mashallah, out of my 2,000 surplus, I'll give $100 a month sponsorship to Al-Ain, to World Federation Aid, to a Zahra Trust. Mashallah, I've done good. $100, I've supported an orphan in Afghanistan. Mashallah. The other $1,900 belongs to me. That's how we're used to thinking, because we've grown up in a capitalistic society. Actually, whatever is surplus to your needs doesn't belong to you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you your rizq, and whatever is the amount for you is needed for you. whatever is surplus to this does not belong to you. It's not to be spent on an even nicer car that I don't need, or an even nicer first-class ticket that I don't need, or an even whatever, or a third pair of sneakers that I don't need, or to go out even more fancy than I don't need. That actually belongs to someone else. We'll talk about this more, inshallah. Now, firstly, we need to debate the ayah, because there's a difference of opinion on the ayah. And as you know, the best way our mufassirin perform tafsir of the Quran is to see how the Quran speaks about itself in other ayat. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh, famous hadith says, Al-Quran yufassiru ba'dahu ba'd. The Quran comments on itself. And so grand mufassirin like His Eminence Sayyid Tabatabai, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, and others who have followed this methodology will see how Allah speaks about a word or a verse elsewhere in the Quran in order to understand a particular verse in the Quran. So, our mufassirin, for example, look at the word al-afwa, surplus, and they see how does Allah use the word al-afwa in the Quran. One type of usage of the word al-afwa means moderation. So then we'd have to rephrase the verse. They ask you, Ya Rasulullah, what should they spend? Say, spend in moderation. This is one potential meaning of the verse. Another way that the Quran uses the word al-afwa is in the way of reconciliation. So we would again have to change the meaning of the verse. They ask you, Ya Rasulullah, what should they spend in the way of Islam? Say, spend in a way that reconciles people. This is a potential second meaning of the verse. Third verse says that the word al-af means surplus and whatever makes you thrive, goes beyond. This is why our mufassirin have translated this verse to mean surplus. They ask you, Ya Rasulullah, what should you spend in the way of Islam? Whatever is surplus to your needs belongs to Allah and Islamic needs, Islamic projects. You might say, okay, Jafar, I mean, all three verses potentially fit, all three meanings potentially fit. What do Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam say? Because surely Ahlul Bayt comment on these ayat. Which one do you think they choose? Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. In Nahj al-Balagha has the hadith in saying 192, whatever you earn beyond your needs, you are only a treasurer of it for someone else. It doesn't belong to you. The right is on someone else. And this is how redistribution of wealth is done in Islam. Because many a time Allah gives to me more than I need. But in no other circumstance would I dare be greedy to keep it for myself. Inshallah, in a minute we're going to go downstairs and have some food, correct? Yes? Imagine now, I ate more than my share and didn't give you your share of the food. What would you call me? What would you call me? Greedy. Maybe you would even call me a madman. You say, Jafar, you don't need 4 plates. What are you doing with 4 plates? What's the Shaykhna, what is the menu for tonight? Biryani, mashallah. If I have 4 or 5 plates of biryani and none of you get any biryani, firstly, I'll become very ill. Yes? But also, what would you say to me? You say, this is greed. This is madness. Someone here is going hungry. Allah gave 5 plates of food. 1 for you, Ja'far. 1 for brother. 1 for the brother. 1 for the brother. 1 for the brother. 1 for the brother. And anything other than that would be complete madness. Correct or not? Why is it you think and I think that when Allah gives you rizq, He gives you $1 million, He gives you $500,000 salary. He gives you $250,000 salary. He gives you $80,000 salary. It's above what you actually need, you and your family need. What makes us think that this surplus belongs to me to spend on whatever I want? Who told you this? Since when did you get this idea? From where? Other than Western capitalism. The Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam tell us otherwise. This is how redistribution of wealth is supposed to occur. Because if I earn $5,000 in a month, but my actual needs are 3, it's not for me to go, I have 2,000, mashallah, look how good I am. I give $100 to a poor family in Afghanistan. Look at me, mashallah, how good I am. $1,900 for me to blow on whatever I want. No. That extra $2,000, Allah gave it to me to give to you. Or to give to you, or to give to you, or to give to whoever was in need. Not $100 and then pat myself on the back. MashaAllah, I gave $100 sponsorship this month to someone in Yemen. But that's what we've been grown up and taught to think. Why? As I said earlier, because the whole Islamic economic system is in the hands of whom? The donors and the aid agencies. And they are deciding how wealth is being advertised to you, distributed from you, which we'll talk about more. Now I need to clarify, just to make sure you all understand. Let's say I earn $5,000. All of my legitimate needs, whatever that is, my mortgage, my bills, looking after those people who have wajib nafaqah underneath me as husband or as father, those people I am Islamically responsible for, savings, investments, anything that is legitimate in your expenditure in that month, it comes to 3,000, it comes to 4,000, it comes to 4,500. That is a legitimate expense and outgoing. That is Allah's rizq to you. Sometimes a person needs to put money aside for a savings. They need to do something. Sometimes you're saving for a holiday. Sometimes you're saving for umrah. Sometimes you're saving for an investment. Sometimes you're saving for anything legitimate that is part of your expenditure. Now it could be that after all your expenses, you have nothing left over. Allah has given you that amount of rizq. It could be that after all your rizq, you have $50 left over. It could be that you have $10,000 left over. The number is not important. Following the rules of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu is important. If you have just $50 at the end of the month above your needs, your genuine needs, whatever that might be, for your lifestyle, your needs, whatever that amount is, remember, it's like that second plate of food. It belongs to someone else. Last slide. Hadith comes to us from our 6th Imam, Jafar ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. He is narrated to have said, the faith of a servant of Allah is never complete without 4 traits. Noble character, may Allah grant us. Generosity, may Allah grant us. Sparing of unnecessary speech, may Allah grant us. And spending the surplus from one's wealth. Your iman and my iman is never complete until we realize that what is above our needs does not belong to us. And that is supposed to be redistributed. Where and how? We will come to tomorrow, inshallah. Where Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam say, qard is preferable over sadaqah. And night number 3, we will look at 25 Quranic charitable avenues that are supposed to be invested in. As I said, this is available in detail in this book and inshallah in the forthcoming one. And I hope tomorrow night to be able to have copies of the book for anyone who wants to be able to have one. I thank you for your time this evening. Please think about this, and then inshallah we will have more time tomorrow to be able to have a short Q&A at the end of the majlis. I will shorten the majlis and want to be able to hear back from your ideas, not only about tonight's discussion, but also tomorrow night's. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all as a community. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be able to fulfill the Islamic economic system. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be able to help others as he has demanded from us. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وصلي يا ربي على خيرتك من خلقك محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل. I ask you to conclude this discussion with a loud salawat in honor of our sixth Imam, Jafar ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi.